So I've been a heavy user of the iPhone over the past 10 years. I've had the chance to see the iPhone evolve throughout its cycle, from the tiny chassis of the iPhone 4 to the behemoth that is the iPhone 16 Pro Max. And in this video, I wanted to share my experience and thoughts using the iPhone 16 Pro Max over the past 6 months. Also, if any of you are interested in this wallpaper, I'll leave a link to it in the description below. So I've been using the base iPhone 16 Pro Max with 256GB of storage in black titanium. Apple did make the screens on the iPhone 16 Pros slightly larger this year, which I definitely appreciate alongside the slimmer bezels. It's a change I actually do notice during day-to-day usage, and overall it gives the phone a more modern feel. The one aspect of the design that is starting to feel a bit outdated though is the dynamic island. As creative as the animations are, I think the hole punch layout you see in most Android smartphones looks a lot cleaner. I think it's also annoying that even in 2025, there's still no ability to split screen on the iPhone. Multitasking is definitely an area where the iPhone lags behind Android phones. You know, the other day I was adding up some transactions in my banking app, and I was having to constantly switch between my calculator app and my banking app, which just gets a bit annoying after a while. Whereas if I was on an Android phone, I'd be able to have both apps open at the same time. I can somewhat understand why Apple might want to exclude this on smaller iPhone models, because there is of course limited space for having multiple apps open at once. However, I think that this should definitely be a feature on the larger Pro Max and plus size iPhone models. Thankfully, one thing that Apple seem to have improved on this iPhone is the durability. I've been using this phone without a screen protector since November and haven't had any micro scratches yet. I did drop the phone once whilst I was shopping at Zara, which did create a few chips around the bezels, but overall nothing major. The weight of the Pro Max has also never been an issue for me. You know, I can comfortably use this thing in one hand, and it's relatively easy to fit into most pockets. And overall, I just prefer the larger size of the Pro Max. I know that some people find it too big, and they prefer the smaller size of the regular Pro, which is completely okay, but I personally like having the larger keyboard for typing and the larger screen for viewing content. However, the main reason why I always opt for the Pro Max over the regular Pro is the battery. Longtime followers of the channel will know that the main reason why I upgraded from my iPhone 14 Pro to the 15 Pro Max 2 years ago was because the battery on the 14 Pro was just awful. For me personally, battery life is one of the things that I care the most about in a smartphone. You know, not having to worry about where my next charge is going to come from is something that I value a lot in a mobile device. And on the whole, I'm pleased to say that the iPhone 16 Pro Max hasn't disappointed. I'm generally able to go 1 to 2 days without charging my phone, averaging around 4 to 5 hours of screen on time during normal days. Now, of course, everyone's own use case is going to be slightly different. You know, things like the brightness level on your phone or even the signal in your area can all massively skew how much battery life you're able to get. But essentially how I like to test how good a phone's battery life is through something that I call the London day trip test. So the question I ask myself is, let's say I was visiting a big city like London, or really anywhere that's far away from where I live. The question I ask is, could this phone realistically last me throughout the entire day if I accidentally left all of my chargers at home? You know, that's with me using the navigation there on the way back, you know, using mobile data all day, even in low signal areas, streaming music all day, taking photos and videos with the brightness turned up, basically using my phone like an absolute monster for the day. And I've actually had the chance to run this test 3 times over the past 6 months. And every time the phone has managed to last me through the entire day, starting with around 90% when leaving the house and finishing off with around 30 to 40% on average at the end of the day. And because of this, I no longer have to carry around any type of MagSafe charger when I'm traveling, unless I'm literally going away for multiple days. The cameras. Longtime followers of the channel will know that I am a heavy user of the cameras on the iPhone. You know, it's what I use to shoot all of these YouTube videos with. In fact, I'm using the iPhone 16 Pro Max to shoot this very video right now. I've continued to be amazed at some of the photos and videos I've been able to take on the iPhone, especially videos shot in slow motion at 120 frames per second. You can see from the footage that there is very little stutter or loss of quality, which is a common issue you get when shooting in this frame rate on other cameras. If you're somebody who's looking to begin creating content online, the iPhone is honestly the camera I'd recommend to most people, because there is just so much that you can do with it. One change Apple did make to the iPhone 16 Pros this year was giving the ultra-wide camera a 48 megapixel lens, which in theory was meant to help improve the quality of its photos. Now, I've personally never been the biggest fan of the ultra-wide camera, mainly because I find that every time I use it, the white balance gets sort of thrown off, and I get this weird black shadow surrounding the image that looks a bit creepy. And this is still an issue that persists on the iPhone 16 Pro Max. So Apple, if you are listening, please fix that. One feature that has also stirred a lot of conversation about this phone is of course the camera control button, given how in 99% of cases, the feature just gets in the way when trying to take a photo. It definitely is not a reason to buy this phone. However, I have learned to live with it, and I do somewhat appreciate how the button offers quick and easy access to the camera for moments where I quickly need to capture something. Plus it also frees up the action button for other use cases. Another feature I've really appreciated has been the new tone mapping feature. Even though I shoot the majority of my photos in RAW, I don't shoot everything in RAW, mainly because that would very quickly eat up all of the storage space on my phone. And so for the times where I do take regular JPEG photos, I'll use the tone mapping feature to quickly touch up a photo and add in a bit of contrast. Performance. I'm actually debating whether or not I should even continue including this section in future iPhone reviews, because I honestly can't tell the impact that the A18 Pro chip has made compared to the A17 Pro last year. That's not to say that I don't welcome the upgrade, and if anything, it just goes to show how far smartphones have come in terms of performance. I think the biggest letdown with the chip is the fact that iOS continues to remain quite buggy. I've had a number of instances where the camera app just turns completely black when I open it, or where the music app just crashes anytime I try to play something, or where the Wi-Fi suddenly drops, even when I'm sat right next to my router. And it all does detract from the seamless experience Apple is usually known for. With rumours of a major redesign in iOS 19 around the corner, I am slightly worried about what this will mean in terms of bugs on the iPhone going forward. It's hard to talk about the iPhone 16s without mentioning the elephant in the room, which is Apple Intelligence. I've said in multiple reviews on this channel that I don't quite think Apple Intelligence is at the point where it makes sense to upgrade your device because of it. Don't get me wrong, being able to quickly remove people in the background of photos using cleanup is nice, and I do appreciate some of the notification and email summaries you get throughout the system. However, the main feature we were waiting for, which is that personalized Siri, still hasn't arrived yet. And by the looks of it, we might have to wait until the iPhone 17s are out in order to get that. I can of course appreciate that what Apple are trying to do with Siri is a bit of an ask, because they're essentially trying to create this hyper-personalized voice assistant that somehow knows everything about you, whilst also adhering to Apple's own privacy standards. However, despite that, this delay is still very disappointing. Also, I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like a lot of the Apple Intelligence features feel a little bit rushed. For example, the whole Siri integration with ChatGPT feels very cumbersome to use, and even the UI surrounding Apple's visual intelligence feature looks very basic. It looks like it was made in a couple of days, and there's something about it that feels un-Apple-like. All of this has got me wondering whether or not we've hit peak iPhone, because it is quite difficult to see where the iPhone goes from here, given how good it already is. I think if you're a regular user, the experience of using an iPhone for everyday tasks definitely has peaked for now. However, if you are a tech enthusiast, I still think that there are a couple of areas where Apple can make improvements to this device. One major example is with the cameras and their performance in low light environments. Although the iPhone's camera performs superbly when in well lit environments, like most smartphone cameras, it continues to suffer from a lot of noise when shooting at night, especially the selfie camera, which I think is in need of a resolution upgrade. And I think Apple could take a cue from Samsung when it comes to the display game. One thing that I really liked about the S25 Ultra was that anti-reflective coating, and I think it's something that Apple should definitely look to steal on future iPhone models. So overall, I have somewhat mixed feelings about the iPhone 16 Pro Max. On the one hand, it is a solid phone as far as flagship smartphones go. And I think that if you're coming from something like an iPhone 13 series or a 12 series, you are going to notice a lot of big improvements in areas like the design and the display and the cameras. However, ultimately, I still think that this phone will go down in history as a bit of a stopgap between the iPhone 15 Pro and the iPhone 17 Pro that we're expecting later this year. So if you're thinking about buying the iPhone 16 Pro in early 2025, I'd probably hold off on that if you can. But let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of this phone. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to follow me on Instagram and Twitter and subscribe for the next one.